So welcome you guys to Live Meetings Updates 2020 and Beyond. We can go ahead and remove the polling. This is health safety for quality, air quality, meetings and events. I'm really glad again to have you guys on the show. I'm going to remind you to use the Q&A section to ask questions. I will be fielding the questions from that area, and I will let you know that I'm going to answer your questions live, or I will have the answer typed into that Q&A area for you. If I'm answering them live, please pay attention because I do not just outright say your question. I weave them into our conversations. So keep an eye out there for the answers. Do not use the Q&A or do not use the chat for your questions. Use the Q&A for your questions. The actual chat area, my team from Meeting Sites Pro will be dropping in various resources, including contact information for all of our panelists today. And also we will be dropping in links to topics that we're talking about along the way. So hopefully that helps. They'll be interacting with you from the chat area. I'll be viewing and managing the Q&A area here. So thank you. And without further ado, I'm going to kick us off and start us off with the next slide and just talk about a little bit about the information shared today. Is going to be based on our own experiences and our perspectives. And it's not intended to be taken as a prediction of the future, nor as legal advice. So if you have legal questions about the stuff that we're talking about today, please consult an attorney for that. None of us are attorneys that are on this show. And again, these are our we're sharing our experiences and with each of you. So that being said, the purpose again, and back in March when everything started to shut down across the country in our industry, we started bringing people together from across the country to talk about how to move forward, how to create an environment where in-person meetings can happen with safety top of mind. And during this time frame, I was also reaching out to many of my connections on social media, many of whom I knew and some of whom I did not know, to get a pulse on how they were feeling. And I found that many were feeling discouraged, frozen, and in need of information. So I felt I needed to do something to our industry and started offering these live meetings updates 2020 and beyond. Every week we were doing them from May through October. In October, we moved to a format which is once a month. It's the second Thursday of every month, so please mark your calendars. In order to get the information about the free webinars, if you like us on Facebook or LinkedIn, the Meeting Sites Pro page on there, we will post regularly when we are having those. Also, when you subscribe to being on our show, we will send emails out to you guys for those purposes. So again, the purpose of these meetings is to inspire, educate, and focus forward on what is possible and rather than what is not. We aim to answer all your questions during these shows, so please remember to ask your questions, as that's the only way we're able to answer them. And we want to leave you with at least one new idea moving forward in in-person meetings and events. We want to give you inspiration and give you ideas that will keep you relevant, and that's our goal for today. So before you exit the show, you'll be provided with a short survey to complete to evaluate our performance today. Please complete the survey to let us know that we met your goals, what else that we can help you guys with in moving forward. I personally read every comment and use your feedback to further these shows. So I just want to say thank you very much for taking the time to actually put those together. That said, I want to talk about some of the upcoming webinars. We have a digital destination show that happens every Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific time and 2 p.m. Eastern time. So these you do not need to register for these. This is travel from the comfort of your home across the country and world. If you're just looking for a place to vacation, to do a site inspection, or you're just curious, we want to take you on a journey right now when not everybody's doing travel. So feel free to join us on this. We also have our next live meetings update. This is our last one for 2020. Our next one, our first one for 2021 will be on January 14th, 2021. I am going to be calling these live meetings updates 2021 moving forward. So just keep an eye out for that, that change. We will be talking about, again, answering your questions first and foremost. And we will be talking about in-person meetings, best practices, and sharing resources with you as we move forward. And I'm looking forward to starting off the new year with you guys. We also created a Meetings Mean Business page on Facebook, so feel free to join us. On there, there's a QR code here. You're going to see QR codes throughout the presentation. Feel free to scan those. They'll take you to various areas. We'll also be dropping in the chat box links to these things. So you can look for them in both places. The next thing is we understand that given the current environment and event registration fee is not feasible for everyone, and therefore we aim to keep these free for anybody to join. That said, we do incur some fees in the production, editing, and management of these programs. If you enjoy the content and are able to contribute, we would appreciate your donations. And I want to just thank those supporters who have donated so far. So thank you guys very, very much. And then let's look at the updates. There's a couple current websites and resources that I'm using to stay updated on the current environment. And so I do a state-by-state travel restriction update and a state-by-state reopening tracker. And I'm going to ask Isabella to drop those links, since they're not actually spelled out here, into the chat. But please note that these are really great resources that are really updated frequently that will help keep you informed as we're moving forward. So use those. And then we have another best practice that I really like is using pre-event communication. I've been talking about this a lot on our shows. And I want to make sure that you guys realize that this is a best practice for in-person meetings as well as virtual meetings, but this show focuses on in-person meetings. So really keeping everybody in the loop and letting them know what's happening up front. That's not just your hotels and your meeting planners and your client, but also keeping your attendees informed of what to expect when they get on site. I'm going to ask Alyssa to forward to the next slide, please, because we're one behind. Okay, so here's the pre-event communication one. So you really want to detail the measures that you're taking. You want to ask people who have to stay at home who aren't well or that are in a high risk category. You want to educate attendees about the ways to stay healthy and control their exposure. And part of what we're going to do today is talk about airflow quality, which I'm really excited about. It's a topic I haven't seen talked about a whole lot, but now that we know that the virus can be airborne for a period of time, I think it's important that we discuss and educate ourselves in those areas. So I'm excited about that. And you want to update your participants on those resources and the information that you have. Allow flexible cancellation, and you want to be transparent again in all your details. We also encourage using pre-event surveys at least a day before each person travels, but you can also do them each day of the program, and you can do it post-program, which I'm really encouraging people to do, is do surveys after the event, maybe at the 5-day mark and again at the 10-day mark, so that you can contact trace if necessary and provide appropriate follow-up with attendees if there is an incident. So I feel like these are best practices that we've been sharing on the show. I just wanted to put them all in one slide for you. You can do these pre-event surveys yourself, but you can also use a company. We've been using IHP, in-house physicians to help us with this. And as you can see, when they do the surveys, you're asked questions, you answer them, and at the end of the survey, you get either a thumbs up to let you know that you're cleared to travel, and then the person that gets this would show this to me when they arrive on site for registration, or they get a thumbs down, which means they're not cleared to travel, should not go to your show, and they should check with the physician. If they get this and are answering during the show on site, then they would check in with the resource that we have in place. With in-house physicians, we have a PA or a nurse practitioner that's with us on site for these programs. And so we can direct those individuals to our resources that are there specifically to handle any potential risk, whether it's somebody with a temperature that may just have a flu bug or could have COVID. So we'll be able to manage those successfully. So I'd encourage you, if you don't have a resource, there's a lot of companies out there like in-house physicians. This is just one that I've been using and I find very helpful, reasonable, and the guy who owns it is a physician himself. And so he does a really great job of of doing this, and he's really great information. I have a question. It says, does the IHP physical form results also go to show the organizers so we know if that person should not travel and contact the hotel and airlines to stop them? And the IHP survey goes directly to the meeting management company who hired them to do it. So yes, you know that. And that individual gets the result back right away as well. So they, in my experience, they haven't had to be stopped. They know not to travel that day. So, so that's a good thing. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. So let's welcome our panelists to the show. I'm super excited to have them here. I just want to start off with, we have a great leadership panel, and starting with our special guest from Trane Technology. Tyler is going to be with us today. We also have Tiffany Coy for La Cantera, Gary Hernbroth from Training for Winners, and Barbara Bowman from Live Nation Special Events on the show. We will welcome them individually to the show and speak to them for about 7 minutes. And then we will have all of them back on the show again for a panel discussion and to answer any of your remaining questions. So please don't forget, use the Q&A to ask your questions. And first off, I'm going to start with a case study. Recently, we had Realcomm and IBCOM did a case study on best practice for moving forward during COVID and pre-planning with safety top of mind. And so this is was a really great resource, and they put it together. We have a video that's going to be shown right now in the chat box, but it was done at the Gaylord Rockies Resort, and it was a result of them having an in-person meeting they were going to have there. And they brought out an HVAC expert, a third-party HVAC evaluation company, and they had landlords and property managers and occupants that were involved in it, but they also had the hotels that were involved in it, and they did a SWOT analysis of the entire strategy framework, including KPIs. So they were looking at facility public health technology and cases and attendees and staff policy requirements, and then business continuity for conferences and the venues. And they brought everybody together on this, which was really important. And I'm going to bring Tyler on because I sent this over to Tyler, and his company does a lot of HVAC stuff. So it was really important to get his feedback on how this works. So Tyler, welcome to the show, and just looking forward to getting your feedback on this.
Hi, Michelle. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I think this is a great thing you're doing for our industry, and looking forward. This is good.
Thank you.
First of all, I think I was really excited when Michelle sent this over to me. This is really the key on how we can effectively bring people back into their buildings, bringing everybody to one table and look at the system and the design of the system and what they're doing right now to make sure that it's properly suited for your event spaces. That means bringing your facility engineers, your event coordinators, and outside resources like myself or our technicians to look at the full system and make sure that it's designed properly for its spaces. What I was really excited about too when I looked at the video is they're using data. All of our buildings these days rely on smart technologies that are bringing in literally millions of data points that we can use to both justify the solutions that we're providing to make the indoor air quality better, and as well as make the occupants comfortable. They can actually see the data and see that this building is a healthy place to be in. So that was really exciting.
That is exciting. And I mean, talk to us a little bit about where we are now. I know we were talking even before the show about CDC guidelines, and I know they keep changing because they keep getting more information. So talk to us a little bit about where we are now from your perspective.
Yes, definitely. So on the slide, you can see this is directly from CDC. Where we're at, and this is as of October, they just released a statement, is we know that the transmission of this virus occurs now much more commonly through airborne transmission. So what that means is this virus can reside on droplets in the air or particles in the air, more so than on surfaces like doorknobs and tables and such. What this means is that this virus can linger down in the air, what we think farther than just 6 feet. So throughout a whole space and beyond just a few seconds in the air and settling, but maybe in even minutes, sometimes up to hours, depending on the ventilation in the room. Why this is important is it goes beyond just masks and social distancing now, and actually actively treating the whole space and making sure the whole space is properly ventilated before and during when occupants are in there. As you can see in the bottom, proper room ventilation, treatment, and exhaust air is key to keeping your occupants safe.
And I feel like we've been talking about outdoor events being a safer way to go. And really the key thing is airflow. And this is where it got me thinking, like, they're saying it's safe to have them outdoors as long as we're able to spatial distance and wear masks. How can we work with doing airflow and bring them inside? So let's talk a little bit about some of your HVAC related recommendations. Like, what is the best air cleaning technology out there?
Sure. So to touch on your first point, outside air is important both inside and outside of buildings, right? The key is to get as much outside air into your building to keep it fresh and dilute any indoor air that's what we call sick, or it has, viruses, bacteria, mold, volatile organic compounds in it. These are really the 4 pillars of indoor air quality as recommended from Ashrae, which is the governing body for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, as well as CDC. Really, the good news is out of these 4 pillars, 3 of them are already in your building. You don't have to spend any extra money and a very minimal amount of time to institute these best practices. Key is to dilute or bring in as much fresh air as possible and increase the, air changes or the ventilation rate of your building, so that instead of, let's say all the air in your building being refreshed 1 to 3 times an hour, it's now 5 to 10 hours, which means, or 5 to 10 times an hour, which means it's healthy air coming in your building, as well as exhausting the air that's coming out of your building.
Would you say that 5 to 10 minute, or like recycle 5 to 10 per hour, is that a good, like if I'm calling a property to ask what their ventilation is from an HVAC, would that be something I would say 5 to 10 would be a good amount? Or what's a good amount for an indoor meeting space to feel like, so that the virus would be diluted?
Sure. So the standard design in the past was three air changes an hour. Now we're recommending to double that. So go anywhere from 5 to 6 or even 10 if your system can handle it. That's a very important question to ask when you're evaluating your spaces, because a lot of buildings simply just don't do that. It takes a lot of energy, or it's forgotten. So that's a great first question to ask. That's easy for the building engineer that you're working with to fix.
So how would we ask that question?
Sure. It's, I'd say just be open and honest with them. Ask what they're doing at the air conditioning level in your space that you're using. Exactly what are they doing? How much fresh air they're bringing inside the building? What kind of filters they're using? What they're doing to contain or control the humidity? Those are all easy questions to ask that they should have an answer for.
When I'm talking about the fresh air piece of it, though, like what is it? I'm looking for 6 to 10 what?
Air changes an hour is the
air changes per hour.
Yeah. Or your ventilation rate.
Per hour or ventilation rate. Okay, that's great. Okay, so I know I've skipped all over the place here. So that was really important. I wanted to make sure I understood that. And you also mentioned there was a governing body that, is it Ashrae?
Ashrae, yep. American Society of Heating, Ventilation, and Air Conditioning.
So ASHRA.
ASHRAE. I butchered their acronym, but that's okay.
Okay, perfect. So those of you out there wanting to get this information even in further detail can go to ASHRAE. And does the dilution refresh frequency change based on square footage?
It does. And that's really important why you should definitely partner with both the building engineers and the HVAC professional to evaluate the space. It's really easy to take a lot of information off the internet and try to apply it to your building. Unfortunately, sometimes that's not the right way to do it. It can be even cost you more money or hurt your occupants by doing something that has not been properly vetted by a professional. That's why I'm always encouraged to see case studies like the one at the hotel in Colorado, where it's a true partnership with all parties involved to evaluate the existing system and see what we can implement with other air cleaning technologies to further protect your occupants.
And I know your company offers services that are in line with doing, I guess, surveys of properties. How would somebody go about contacting your company to get involved with that? You're so big, it was hard to actually even find you.
Sure. So Trane does have what we call an indoor air quality assessment program, where we go into your building and we do a full assessment of the design and the existing space. And then based off these 4 pillars, make recommendations. I've done this for full buildings. I've also done this for event spaces, ballrooms and large rooms, to see what we can do to improve the existing system and how we implement any other clean air technologies. There's a great landing page on the Trane website that goes through in detail exactly what this means. And it also has a nice little spot that you can contact your local Trane commercial sales office, or even just send me an email and I'm happy to help.
Okay, perfect. I know we're going to drop Tyler's information in so you guys can connect with him on LinkedIn as well, and be able to send messages directly to him. If you are at a hotel that's interested in getting more information on their HVAC systems, or if you're a meeting planner interested in pulling them in and partnering with you on your next in-house meeting, that they're a great resource. Let's talk about some best practices for meetings and events. What can we do with our existing buildings air to maximize guest and really employee, not just guests, but also the hotel employees' safety?
Sure. So there's a lot of really easy things to do at the front end. The first thing is make sure your ventilation rate is maximized to increase the fresh air. Before anyone enters the space, we recommend flushing the whole room with fresh air about 4 hours before. Then make sure that the system is working during the event. So don't turn off the air conditioning. Do as it was designed to properly exhaust the air and control the humidity. Also, an easy thing that a lot of people are doing right now is increasing the filtration inside the air conditioning systems. That's very important. Work with your building engineer to make sure that they have maximized the filtration possible in the space, and that they're actively changing the filters between your events so that they're clean filters and doing their job. The last part and most important part is to flush the building before and after, or after any other events and between events, to make sure that you're taking out as much air out of that building that's been with the people and bringing in fresh outside air. I'd say, go ahead.
I was saying, I've talked to a couple of hotels because I've been in the process of doing in-person meetings for a while now, and we've been talking about some of the systems. Trane Technologies does a lot of HVAC systems in many of the hotels. So I do know that there's a number of options available, and most of the hotels that I'm working with have had the UV lighting available in there, but they also have the ability through their HVAC system to push through fresh air from outside into the meeting space. But their buildings are so big, and there's multiple buildings, that it's not just one Trane HVAC system that's on these. There's multiple of them, and not all rooms are equal.
Exactly. All rooms are not equal. All systems are not equal, and all technologies that are out right now are not equal. It's really important when you're looking at the system to work with a professional to evaluate all of these technologies. UV is a great example that can be installed correctly, but also installed incorrectly, and ends up being a waste of money or even a danger to the occupants inside. There's a lot of technologies out there, whether they're passive, which means that air has to flow through them in order to be effective, such as UV, or even active technologies like bipolar ionization or ozone generators, where it's actually actively getting in the space, interacting with all the air molecules in the space to sanitize and clean. Those all should work together, and it's something that you'll need help to assess. And so that's my recommendation when working with your buildings.
When you're talking about flushing a space, how long does it typically take to flush a space?
So typically it'll take, with the air change rate, designed up to three times for an hour to get all that air out. So let's call it 20 minutes to get all that air out if the system's working properly and designed correctly and controlled correctly.
So hopefully that answers that question. And then can you talk about what are some of your best or most recommended air cleaning methods?
Sure. So there's, as you can see on this slide, there's a lot of technologies out there, a lot of manufacturers out there, and there's more and more coming out in the marketplace every week, it seems like. there is a good, better, best approach to these technologies, but really the key is working with an expert to see what the best technology is for your specific space. To start out, the best first thing to do is increase your filtration rate to the maximum amount that your system can handle, and then bring in both active and passive technologies to make sure that all the air in the system is constantly being treated. There's a lot of different manufacturers and technologies out there, and that's why it's important to work with both the facilities team that's operating the specific hotel, as well as an expert to define what exactly fits within your budget and what's proper for the space.
Perfect. And I mean, there's a lot of different things you can do, from the UV lighting to the filterization, and there's a lot of stuff even in between there. If you guys get a chance to use your cameras right now to take a picture of this slide, this will help you moving forward. But I also want to remind you guys to really ask about the airflow per hour, the ventilation specifically, and any other filter systems they have in place that help to eliminate bacteria and viruses in the air. There's one thing I wanted to bring up to you, and I should have actually told you I was going to bring this up to you, but I'm just thinking about it now. There's some new, some sports teams that have been out there that have been talking about using a new stuff where they're spraying, what's it called? Hydrogen peroxide, dried hydrogen peroxide into the air. And it's created a 99.9% bacteria virus-free environment, and they've been able to do this successfully. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know you guys are in this space too.
Yes, yeah. So Trane has recently partnered with one of the largest companies in this space. We call it DHP, dry hydrogen peroxide. Basically, what it does is it creates a very small gas molecule that's completely safe for humans. In fact, humans have more of it inside their bodies than what we're actually putting into the space in terms of density, where these hydrogen molecules actively seek out any organic material to match with and deactivate in the space. What's great is this means this goes in literally any nook and cranny in your event space. It goes into corners and table surfaces and doors and everything like that. And it's always working. So there's literally millions of these molecules being pumped in the space per second to actively treat the air. What's great about that is you don't have to rely on ventilation rate to clean out the air. It's getting attacked in the space and rendering it harmless and falling out of the breathable zone that infects the people.
Well, thank you for that. I do really appreciate it. I'm going to keep you on the show, Tyler. Just thank you for being on now. So I'm going to ask you to go on camera, but stay on because we're going to bring you back on as part of the panel so that we can ask and make sure we are able to answer everybody's questions.
Thank you.
So thank you. Okay, so I don't know if you guys were aware that on November 3rd, MPI held a hybrid WEC conference in Grapevine, Texas. And I want to show this video to you real quick right now. Take a look at this. awesome, happened in June, and they did a really great job. They had 1,131 registrants for this program. And without further ado, I'd like to bring Tiffany Coy on the show. She was one of the attendees at WEC, and I just want you to talk a little bit, Tiffany, welcome, talk a little bit about your experience at the show as a participant, and specifically this slide. I love the creating social distancing marketing opportunities.
Oh, well, thanks, Michelle. I really appreciate you having me on today. Hello, everybody from San Antonio. WEC's was amazing. Having gone through the COVID, not traveling, I think every single meeting planner and supplier that was at the event was just over the moon to be back together again. So you can kind of see in some of the photos, I love marketing and I love what we're doing here and bringing everybody together virtually and talking about how we can move forward as an industry. And I think nobody does it better than MPI, that collection of incredibly talented folks. So what they did was create opportunities for us to tell our story, tell the story of what we were doing that week while we were together and doing it safely. We were at the Gaylord Texan in Grapevine, which is a huge property. So we had some opportunities, just like you see in the bottom right corner with the big MPI, where you could go and maybe each person buy a letter, stay 6 feet apart. The top middle picture is our MPI Texas Hill Country chapter board. We were in one of our breakout sessions there. So we learned to take pictures where you don't look so distant from each other by having someone 6 feet in front, someone behind. And so there's a little bit of that optical illusion so that we don't feel so spread apart. And of course, all your hashtags. And it was just a wonderful event, and I could go on forever about it. But
well, it's great to get back and really hear people getting excited about in-person meetings. Can you tell us a little bit about the daily check-in process and how that went? I know there's a lot of touchless technology now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I heard you touch on it earlier in the webinar today as well, that in-house physicians group was the one that MPI had selected as well. And it is a very simple process. So we didn't have the normal registration line. We did receive our registration packet pre-event. And then each morning you get online, you fill out your health questionnaire, make sure, hey, are you feeling good? Is there any fever? Have, any of these categories that we need to be aware of? And then you get your green check mark for entry. And so when we went to the meeting space each day, you had a different color wristband that you would put on, just like at a concert, where, Monday was green, maybe Tuesday was blue. And so they would know who had been checked in and not. And then your wristband was your entry point into the meetings that day. And one thing I thought they did really well as you were walking around the events, if you can see in that top left corner, the ladies, they had these cute little signs, mask up, y'all, like as a reminder for all of us, because we are human and we love those personal interactions. But it was just a very subtle reminder for us to, hey, let's make sure we do this safely. We're back to events, we can do it, but we need you to follow the rules. So I thought they did a great job of that.
I love having the different roles now that we didn't have before in place to try to help with that. But also they serve as great information and resource providers along the way. So if you're a little confused about how to navigate, having them, people designated to being in specific areas to answer questions that help with flow, I think is a best practice. So that's great. There was also a lot of QR codes in here, which I really like. The use of QR codes is not only, fun, but it's also touchless technology. You're already using your cell phone. So I love the idea of being able to give information to people like that. So thanks for sharing that. And then talk a little bit about safe meeting in progress. It's like your meetings when you were having how the meeting space was set up, how the food and beverage flow went. Just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. And, it's not that different from what we were doing before. Perhaps it's just scaled back a little bit. So again, you're not going to have 8 per round or 10 per 60 inch. You're going to have 4 at a 60 inch, and you feel very comfortable, and everyone wears their mask. One thing that we have been doing here at Lock and Terra, I'm like, oh, we've been social distancing for years, but it's like we do action stations and serve each guest individually versus these buffet lines where you come up. So everything is hot and fresh, and it's touched by clean hands, and it's given to one individual. And we saw that the same thing happening at Grapevine. Everything was individually portioned, with some recyclable containers that the guests could throw away when they were completed. So, none of the silverware, et cetera.
And I love the plexiglass too, that be in front, so it kind of helps. And you see everybody cleaning.
Yes,
I love the picture in the bottom right-hand corner, because it used to be that it was taboo to have somebody cleaning out in front of everybody. And I feel like the hotels now have taken the back of the house cleaning and made it more visual. You can see them all cleaning now, and you want to see them cleaning. You want to know that's being cleaned and disinfected.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I was in luncheon with Mike Dominguez, who's the CEO of Alhi, and he had said the same thing. He said, our hoteliers, we've always been cleaning and doing it very well, but it's never something that you saw. We always did it behind the scenes. And now I think it gives people a comfort level for them to see our team and doing it in front of our guests, because it's something you always kind of tried to keep hidden. And but now I think it gives guests a reassurance to start traveling again when they do see our associates out, and making sure those touch points are throughout the day.
Did they do temperature checking at this one by chance? Oh,
yes, ma'am, for sure. Each morning at your registration. I'm sorry I didn't mention that earlier, but when you came in to get your wristband, it was a temperature check. And what was neat too, to follow back up on your point about the QR codes. I know on our registration badges, everybody had their QR code. And as you entered each session, that was a way for contact tracing. So they would scan you in and they would know who was in what session, just in case they needed to reference it.
I love that. It's a great idea. And I do think there's some various conversations about temperature checks going on. And while I don't think that it's going to prove somebody has COVID, it's just a great safety measure to have in place, because you also don't want somebody who has the flu going around and giving the flu to everybody. So if you have a fever, generally means you're contagious with something. So to actually have that person have that checked out further is just a good practice all the way around. It's just going to keep us all healthier. So I wanted to make sure we bring that up. Let's talk a little bit about your meetings now. You're at La Cantera, and you guys are having in-person meetings now. And I just want you to talk a little bit about some of the ways that you're able to social distance and provide an in-person meeting during this time frame.
Yeah, absolutely. We are in South Texas, so we've definitely been more aggressive in our reopening within our state. And it's been great. We've had very much success. I think we are blessed because we have so much space that we're able to create solutions for clients. So one of our meetings that you see here, I put in a couple of slides that those on the left of your screen are from the same client. This was one of their executive leadership breakouts where, again, it's 1 per 6 foot. They did a really great AV tech set in the middle of the hollow square, which was amazing. So each guest could see versus one large screen, which honestly, we've been doing that for that group for quite a while. Just because they love that easy visibility. And of course, video conferencing in. And then the bottom left is, again, you see sometimes the classrooms with 2 chairs on each side, but I feel like an elevated version of that is to put it at a nice round, do a beautiful tablecloth, and then have the chair on each side. So it feels a little bit more comfortable. I know for me, I attended a Teneo event in Atlanta in September, and they did chairs on each side, and I did feel totally safe, but I think that the round just elevates that experience.
I agree.
Yeah, and one thing we've been doing too, which I don't know if you can see it in the top left photo, but we've been setting individual coffee breaks at each person's station. So they've got their 2 Topo Chicos, which are big down here. You've got 2 bottles of water and then maybe a small coffee pitcher for each guest, so that you don't have, the buffet station in the back that everybody's touching. So. And
you guys have a lot of outdoor space at your facility, which a lot of properties don't have, but you seem to have a ton of it. Talk a little bit about your outdoor space setting.
Yeah, well, and that's what I mentioned to you too. Like, my office is super lame. So I was like, let's go to the cabanas today. We've got 10 cabanas and they're all wired for wireless meetings. So we can actually do that down here. But yes, ma'am, our resort, we do sit on 450 acres within city boundaries. So really our options to play outside are pretty limitless. But what you see here, that top panoramic image is from a social distanced event that happened in March, actually, right during the heat of the battle. But it was really cool. We spread things out. We make people feel safe in that open air. And, this particular client, they brought in, I think, 5 Ferraris and had those set out. So, creating experiences that are outside the box, I think is working with planners and being hoteliers. That's what we love to do anyway. So having these outdoor venues really create that. And
we
you can
talk
kind
a
of
lot
see,
about we talk a lot about airflow. We've been talking a lot about airflow. So having it outside is like the most optimal thing you can do as far as airflow goes. So the bottom picture that you have in the middle, that's on the, is it on the lake or what's in the background?
Yes, ma'am. So that's actually at our resort driving range at our resort golf course. So that location, gosh, there's two planes. You know, when you go to the golf course, there's the top one and then another, and each one is 6,000 square feet. So that particular client, we hung the string lighting, we dropped some rounds out there and just had this beautiful, and what you see in the distance is the city skyline views of San Antonio. So it just creates an amazing event. And what's great too, that area is already set up with electricity and things like that. So literally you're just plugging in. So just a lot of activities. And one thing I don't know if I send a picture to you, but what I think that we also do really well is that many of our outdoor seating areas are already prepared for this more social distancing style because we do have such an expansive property. So as you see in that bottom left, that's existing furniture that's just here by our cabanas. So, you know, having those spaces already preset, because, you know, as a planner, if you bring in, you know, court furniture for an outdoor event, that can get pricey very quickly. So if you have a venue that does have existing furniture that's already set up where you can socially distance safely outdoors, that's really a key for success.
Perfect. Well, Tiffany, I thank you very much for being on. You know, you're going to just go off camera, but you're going to stay available so that we can do the panel discussion. And I'm going to bring on our next speaker, Gary. He's recently attended Connect Orlando, which I was really excited to be able to have him. He attended as a speaker and a participant. So we get a speaker viewpoint of his participation in this event. And it happened, do you remember what date it was, Harry?
Hi, Michelle. It was, I think it was toward the middle to third week of October.
Perfect.
In Orlando. Yeah, great to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad to have you on finally. So can you take us through some of the things you noticed and experienced as a speaker and an attendee at Connect?
Well, yeah, before I even got there, we were sent a waiver. I don't think anyone's brought up a waiver yet today, but it was a waiver. And it was kind of a general indemnification type of waiver, which I signed because there wasn't any reason not to. And I thought that was fine. And then I received a bunch of materials and email, and I got a packet of my registration materials, my badge and all that kind of thing. So when I got to the hotel, it was not much of a check-in needed, just to let them know I was there. And I got a bag, and in that bag, there had to be 6 or 7 different combinations of masks and hand sanitizers and things like that the sponsors had given. So as a speaker, I felt like, well, this is a good beginning. And they did take the temperature, and you got a little button on your badge. So one day it was an orange button, the next day it was a green button, and the third day was another color. And that kind of told you, I think I did hear your comments with Tiffany about the temperature. And, you know, no one's really sure. I mean, it's been argued online till we're all blue in the face about whether that's a good thing or not. I would say err on the side of doing it because I think the optics just look good. I think just mentally it made people feel like, okay, you know, the person next to me doesn't have a temperature. So, you know, that's one good sign, right? Rather than wondering. So I think the check-in was fine. And in terms of, if you'd like me to go on about the setup, you know, folks can see there. I did not have to wear a mask. I mean, everybody was masked up for the most part. As Tiffany said, we are human, and sometimes you're talking and you flip it. Oh, okay, that's going to happen anywhere. You can't adjudicate that entirely, but everybody was there. It felt great to be among live people again, and not little tiles on the computer screen, right? So I ran into many clients and customers, and we all said the same thing. Boy, this feels like the good old days again, right? Just being in person. And, you know, most people were respectful of their spaces and whatnot. I had my mask on until I took the stage. I literally had it on while I was talking to, I think it was PSAV did the audiovisual. They're off to the side. You can't see them in the picture, but we were doing our sound check and all that kind of thing. Every attendee and myself was given a sanitized headphone which you can see me wearing there, and then you can see if it's you can see the people wearing there in those chairs. And so they allowed me to not wear a mask, which I was grateful for, because as you can see, there's more than enough room. I was a good 30 feet away from the person in the front row.
Yeah, and I like these setups. I mean, there's a bunch of unique setups you can do now that's out there. And I know you talk about paying attention to 5 S's.
Yes, the 5 S's that I come up with as a speaker, and I want to help my event planner friends out there too, is safety first. Okay, so everything starts with safety, and I think it rolls downhill from there, right? So you've got to say our first job one job one is safety first. So that's your health protocols and all that type of thing, which dovetails into spacing. What does that mean for spacing? So it's 6 feet, 10 feet. Tyler talked about, the air and how far the droplets, go and that type of thing. So whether it's 6 feet, 8 feet, 10 feet, just be aware of that. You've got to have spacing. Sound is very, very important. Now, this one was a little bit of a challenge because the sessions were set around the trade show. So, you had people mingling in the trade show, and then you had sessions going on. And I think that was the other reason we had to have headphones. And headphones totally blocked out all other sound. So people could hear me, I could hear them, I could take questions, they could ask questions. So no one complained about that at all. And they were cleaned up. They were sanitizing them between sessions. They had a staff person there very visibly doing that. And she made sure that you got a clean headphones. So nobody had a problem with that. But you've got to make sure your sound is good. So as you're spacing people out, if you're not in the right facility, sometimes sound can bounce off the walls and things like that. Sight lines, they're always important. I think they're even more important now when you're spacing, because again, you're dealing with a lot fewer people in a lot bigger room. So you've got to make sure that the sight lines are true to both the speaker out to their audience and the audience to the speaker. And then synergy, and I've got that on there because this is a real challenge, I think, both for audience members and speakers, because the speaker has got to make sure that they keep that synergy going. And it's harder to do when people are sitting farther away. And in some cases, if you see these chairs here, they're pretty comfy. I went to a couple of sessions myself, and I remember commenting to Mike Dominguez. He was up on stage. I said, Mike, I could stay in this chair all day and I wouldn't have to move. He said, no, me neither. So they were almost too comfortable, if that's a complaint, not really, but you've got to make sure that you as a speaker, you've got to capture that synergy, because people are, especially, okay, they're headphoned up, they're sitting far away, they're in a comfortable chair. So the chance for interaction, Michelle, is just not there like it used to be. And then the synergy from the audience standpoint is, what do we do to get together in a small group discussion or something? So those things have to have some extra care to them. Those are my 5 S's.
What was the traffic flow in and out of the meeting rooms? Like, was there floor stickers, or how was that handled?
Yeah, they had plenty of signage. There were, I don't remember the floor stickers, but I do remember plenty of signage. So you always knew where you were going. I took this picture. I actually took all these pictures, but this is the one where I walked in and investigated the appointment room. And, as you can see, they just took the old idea of a table, and they flipped the idea. And instead of sitting at the sides of the table, you're sitting at the ends. And I interviewed plenty of suppliers and event professionals. I said, was there a problem with that? Did you have any encumbrances to your conversation? Was it weird? And to a person, they said, no, not weird at all. You're sitting a few farther feet away, but it's not weird. Some people, most of them, as you can see from this picture, they kept their masks on anyway, but they're a good 6 feet away from each other too.
Gary, did they cap the number of people they allowed to register to attend in person?
I don't. I believe there was some discussion about that.
Yeah.
I'm guessing they had 600 or so in person, but I could be wrong about that. But they had to. This room is only one row. Obviously, there are other rows to that room, so you can only have so many interviews, going on, or appointments going on.
So they did cap it.
I think they did. Yeah.
And then, do you know how many people? So you said about 600 in person. Do you know how many people they had participate online?
I don't. Okay. I don't have that number. I had heard that there were a number of people that could do the visual part of it, but I don't have that number for you.
Okay, that's okay. I was just one of the questions from
Sure.
the audience.
And, with all this seriousness of COVID and everything, Michelle, and everybody's a little more buttoned down with the masks and everything, you've got to have some sense of humor. And I thought these other two images that I took showed it. It was October, so it's the fall. Halloween was a couple weeks away. So they had pumpkin spice sanitizer. They had they had caramel apple sanitizer if you wanted that. And literally these little kiosks, I mean, you could not walk 20 feet without seeing another kiosk. In addition to what the vendors were giving out at their tables, and also in that tchotchke bag that you got, instead of keychains and weird pens, you were getting sanitizer. So you could have bathed in Purell from head to toe every day, all over the place. So there was no want for any sanitizers. And then to have a sense of humor, here's a company that was one of the most popular, I think, exhibitors that they had there. And I think they were there by BizBash. And as you can see,
straight out of quarantine. I love it.
Yeah. And you could get a mask. Well, it's customized. And they literally said, hey, let's have a sense of humor about this in all the seriousness is let's have it out there. Don't hide it. Yeah. Let's have it out there. And I embrace that. So if you look at the 4 logos there, you could choose one of those to have a t-shirt and a mask made. They would print it right there on the spot in your size and color.
That's great.
So I got one of the straight out of quarantines.
You should have worn one. You should have worn that shirt.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't. I'll show up with it. I'll have it next time. I'll take a photo and send it into our Meetings Mean Business site.
That's perfect. Okay, Gary, thank you so much for sharing that. I know I'm going to ask you to go off screen, but I'm asking you to stay on because we're going to have a panel discussion at the end of this. So
glad to help, but I'll be here. Right. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
I know that our next guest is Barbara from Live Nation Special Events, and I have known Live Nations mainly from concerts that I've attended. I did not realize that they had special venues, and I found this most interesting. Welcome, Barbara, to the show, and I just wanted to have us kick off by talking about some of these locations you have. I had no idea.
Thanks, Michelle. Hi, everyone. Yes, most people will know us for concerts. Whenever I say to people, do you know Live Nation? They say, I think I get your ticket emails. That's the general response, right? So,
exactly.
when we're not utilizing our venues for concerts, we are utilizing them for special events. So many planners will know House of Blues. So we have 11 House of Blues across the country. And then we have a mixture of about 50 clubs and theaters, and then amphitheaters as well. So those are all Live Nation venues, all that can be used for private events.
That's outstanding. Can you tell me, just because I just found out just having you on the show that you had these venues. Yeah. What else does Live Nations do? So I know you do concerts and you have these special venues for concerts, but you can also use them for meetings, conferences, all sorts of stuff. What else can you tell us about what you do?
Yeah, so our venues can be used for anything from a holiday party to a conference reception to a daytime meeting, and kind of everything in between. Lots of conferences are using our spaces too, especially if they're localized and don't necessarily need those hotel room nights. The great thing about our spaces is you do have the AV production elements that you have for a concert in-house. So you don't have to build the stage and bring that all in as an additional expense. So it's all there. And we're kind of a one-stop shop. We assist you with the catering and decor and kind of anything you need, especially entertainment too. So whether you're looking for that local act, the party band, or you want a national artist to play at your event, we can assist with all of that. So we're definitely awesome to help in those ways.
Can you tell me a little bit about the changes in the venue operations due to, in relation to health and safety due to COVID-19?
Yeah, absolutely. So of course, that's on the forefront of everyone, as we've talked about all day today. So for us, and I think something that Tiffany, mentioned is that enhanced sanitation and safety protocols where we can see it now, right? So you may have known that the bathrooms were clean, but you didn't see that what we're calling a cleaning porter who is constantly, that person is identified. You see them around, you see them wiping down things. We're cleaning our bathrooms every 30 minutes. We're spacing out what you can utilize in our bathroom. So we're really looking at each of our venues and what can we do to make them clean and compliant and make our guests feel comfortable coming, whether it's for a concert or, once we start getting back to those larger concerts, or it's a private event for 50 people. We want people to come in and feel comfortable with that. And everything from, you know, reduced capacity floor plans to how are we working with our catering vendors on special food and beverage, you know, still being creative, but really, you know, helping to be safe and following some protocols. And, you know, what's great, what I would recommend to anybody looking to go into a venue, whether it's a meeting or, you know, an evening dinner, is asking those questions. What are you doing? How are things different than what you've done in the past? Do you have floor plans where we can see where the hand sanitizer stations are going to be? Do you have the stickers that are going to be on the floor? So if people are standing in line to get into the venue, what do those look like? And then we can do fun things with our clients where they can actually brand those elements from hand sanitizer stations to the decals. And we can help them with that too.
I love the branding opportunities that have become available during this time frame as well. Now, I know you've sent over some pictures of some of the venues, and I want to just talk about those because, like I said, I've always considered you guys more of a concert, and so it was a big eye opener for me with 20 plus years of direct industry experience, not knowing that you guys did so much more. And I love these setups. So I know you have this Philadelphia, the venue's the Met, and then you have in Atlanta, you have Coca-Cola, Roxy.
Yeah. So these are actually examples of hybrid events that we've done during this time. So on the left-hand side is an event that we did in Philadelphia, and it was 100 kind of VIPs in venue for a concert. And then the concert was actually broadcast out through a local news station to about 650,000 people watching. So just a different way of utilizing a space. Normally we would have all those people in venue, but you can see the chairs are distantly spaced out, 100 people in, and then still reaching that at-home audience.
Yeah, I love that.
And then on the right is actually a monthly Chamber of Commerce event that we do in Atlanta. It's still happening once a month. We have about 100 people in venue. They used to have 300 in venue, but now, you know, spacing out the guests, but still broadcasting it to that home audience, they've actually grown their audience. So they have about 400 or 500 people that are able to see the event now. And that's a monthly one.
And I'm going to ask Isabella to go to the next slide. But one of the things that has come up repeatedly is, are you limiting the space or limiting the number of people that are coming to? And I think this goes to, again, they normally have 300 people. They've limited to 100 now because of the environment we're in.
Yeah, and it really depends on the local mandates, right? So there are some states right now where you can only have 10 people in a venue at one time, where there's others that is more of a capacity percentage. So we're just, you know, really following those local guidelines, and then also following what our clients are comfortable with. You know, we're doing what we're calling micro events, big spaces, our big music hall for 50 people. And then working with clients on their budget. So, you know, it's not the normal rates that we would normally charge, but, you know, they still want to meet in person. How do we do it safely? How do we do it so that everybody, you know, feels comfortable, as well as we're not charging like we used to?
Okay, I know these are two other locations, Los Angeles at the Hollywood Palladium, and then also Wallington, Connecticut at Toyota Presents Oakland.
Yeah, so what's amazing is the drive-ins that have come back. You know, who thought drive-ins would be so popular, right? They're back. I mean, yeah, which is really cool because it's thinking about utilizing open space. For us, we have parking lots, especially at our amphitheater venues, where you can utilize them for anything. So we've done some graduations, like you see from Toyota Presents Oakdale and Wallingford. Those were in May. And then we're doing a lot of drive-in movie premieres in Hollywood. So what's cool about that is really taking the fun elements of a special event that you normally attend, and how do you implement those into a drive-in? So I pull up, I pop my trunk, I get my goodie bag and my swag bag and my snacks for my meal, put in my trunk. I drive through a step and repeat, stick my head out of the sunroof and wave and get my photo taken, and then pull up and grab my stuff from the trunk and watch the movie. So you can take those elements and do it for a holiday party where you guys can all gather together, but you're still social distance, a sales kickoff rally, a graduation, or, you know, a drive-in movie experience. So there's lots of fun things you can do. I still, you know, being safe in your car, feeling comfortable, but still getting to really kind of meet in person.
Perfect. Thank you, Barbara. And I want to invite the rest of the panel back on the show right now, just to take everybody in. And this is everybody's contact information. So if you guys want to connect with any of us, I know I'm speaking on behalf of our whole panel, that we would love to connect with you. I have some questions, and I'm going to kick it off with you, Barbara. So we just ended with you. I want to say, what has Live Nation done in terms of HVAC quality or air quality for your indoor facilities? Have you done anything with that, or?
Yeah, I'm sure on the higher levels of Live Nation, that is all, you know, reviewed, and they're looking at each venue individually and what the needs are there. So, and you know, that's a great question to ask. And I say to all the meeting planners, ask each venue what they're doing, because everyone could be different, even though it's one company. Just based on, you know, we have some historic venues, have those been updated, you know, so just ask those questions. But yeah, on the larger Live Nation level, you know, with the focus on getting concerts and people back in spaces, that's 100% a conversation that they're having for sure.
Perfect. And then I'm going to go to, so I think they're asking, how do you address air quality issues? And I'm going to leave that. John, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to answer this one. I didn't actually prepare her for that question to come prepared with that answer to that. But I think what she's saying is her executive team works on those air quality situations. I think a takeaway from today's call would be to ask those questions, as Tyler was saying, of the venues when you do seek them out, so that you get the information from them regarding HVAC systems and how they're handling stuff. How much, this is for anybody on the panel, how much of your health and safety protocols are driven by public health versus client requirements?
I mean, I'll start. I think number one, we follow the local mandates. And then if a client comes in and wants more restrictions, we 100% will help implement them. I do have clients already that are doing some rapid testing. That would be specifically for smaller, more virtual filming events, but with crews in-house. So they're doing rapid testing, and we'll help them implement them. Typically, they bring it to us wanting to do that, but we have partners as well we can introduce them to. So I think we start with, you know, what we're doing, and then what the local mandates in those markets, and then definitely expand based on what the clients are needing.
And I want to remind everybody that they, you know, while the IHP does this, there's a lot of companies out there. There's people that are asking me questions about who else does the wellness surveys. There's a lot of companies out there you can find that would do that. I think what's key, in my opinion, I don't know a lot of people that are doing this right now that I'm asking. They're doing pre-event surveys, but they're not doing post-event surveys. And I think that that's a really full circle experience, is to get to know if they did have some exposure, to be able to communicate that, and you wouldn't know that without post-event surveys for the most part. So I do think that that would be another best practice to do. Whose responsibility is that? I think it just depends. I think the venue has a responsibility, the client, the meeting management company has a responsibility, and the participant has a responsibility. We all have duty of care responsibilities in this. And so communicating all of that up front, though, and deciding a plan, a health and safety protocol plan, is really important in making sure that we're able to move forward appropriately. And I hate to do this to Barbara again, but they're saying that they're assuming the empty chairs at the Met photo were eventually filled. And that was just okay.
Yeah, it's a 4,000, I think 3,500 person venue. And so everyone was socially distanced with masks on. It was only 100 people in this space.
Perfect. And Amanda Erickson, would you re-ask your question on what do you do HVAC wise, just more specifically about what that question had to do with? Because I'm sure it was regards to somebody's comment, but I don't have any relation to it right now. Glenn's interested in the panel's opinion on forehead temperatures. I know we've kind of talked to this a little bit, but do you guys have any other comments on temperature checks?
You know, being here at the resort each day, I do come into the office. I know each one of our staff members are checked, and I'm always asking, what's my temperature now? What's my temperature now? Because I know for me, I run more at 95. So when you do come in, maybe a 98.6 might be a little bit high for me. So I think it is important to understand each person's individual body temperatures. You know, if you don't check those at home, I've started to do it 3 times a day now, so I understand what mine looks like. But I do think it's important, just as Gary had mentioned, it's just that extra layer of security that you feel, both from associates, for the registrants coming into the meetings. We do practice that here.
Plus, when you have a temperature, I mean, you probably have something, whether it's COVID or not, I don't know, but you have
it's
something.
Time to go home, right?
That's right. I don't want you
Just
in the
leave.
meeting space or around me. That would
Exactly.
be a great, and I say on this show that this is about being positive and upbeat and spreading positivity as much as possible in this negative time frame. I don't like to bring up negativity, and I don't like it when it comes up on questions on our show. I do, however, have a couple questions by one individual that's been brought up a couple of times about addressing COVID positive cases stemming from specific programs like Connect and WEC. And while I don't want to call out that specific thing, this person is calling it out. And I'm just wanting to say, in general, if you guys have any comments or knowledge of how they have handled that, do either Tiffany or Gary have any knowledge of positive cases that stemmed from those programs and how they were handled?
Well, I got a test after Connect. My wife basically said to me, you went to Orlando from San Francisco on airplanes and airports and went to a convention. So when you get home, you're going to get a test. I said, fine, I have no problem getting a test. And I passed. There was no COVID. I did hear anecdotally through various forums online that there were, and I don't know where these numbers come from, there were 3 people, okay, who after that. My question with that is, and I have talked to my own healthcare provider about this, is it can be a real rabbit hole figuring out where somebody got COVID. And so, you know, if you take my case, for example, let's say I did test positive. You know, I went to the airport, I got on an airplane, I went through, made a connecting gate, you know, bought some soda and water in a gift shop.
Got in a car.
Yeah, got in, you know, yeah, right, got in the little shuttle from the car parking rental thing, got in a car from the airport to the hotel, got to the hotel. So how many touch points did I have where I could have picked it up that have absolutely nothing to do with the due care and diligence that Connect took to make me a safe attendee? So I think it's pretty hard to label and go, oh, that's where you got it. And I also attended a couple webinars where people like Jonathan Howe, who's a very respected attorney in this industry, and he said the same thing. It would be a legal rabbit hole that you could never prove as to where you got it. And you know, I think liability is a big issue.
I think more important than that is, it's not if or when people are going to get it. They're going to get COVID, they're going to get the flu, you're going to catch bugs. We always have caught bugs. We have a new bug out there to catch now. Right. It's just a matter of having a plan in place and executing accordingly. So ideally, you have somebody that gets COVID, you have a plan in place for dealing with COVID. That's the positivity in this. I don't want to talk about rabbit holes or all these crazy terms that make you feel unempowered. What I do want to talk about is ways to empower yourself in moving forward. And how you do that is you plan. You have a plan in place and you execute accordingly. And you don't bury your head in the sand like an ostrich, not answering and asking the important questions that you need to address having in-person meetings in this time frame. So I just think that's super important. So Amanda came on and she had said, La Cantera, in regards to your indoor meeting spaces, how are you handling HVAC or airflow quality?
Yeah, it's a great question. I know I know you specifically asked about meeting space, but I also think we have to look at our guest rooms as part of that conversation. So we have upgraded to hospital quality filters and things. And forgive me, I'm not as well versed as Tyler with Trane, but I do know that we have taken those measures to get the highest standard and quality available for our systems and for our hotel. And then we also have electro misting systems that we go into each guest room at every turn, as well into our event spaces during breaks. So and forgive me, I'm not as well versed in exactly what that does, but I know it sanitizes, it makes it clean and safe for our guests that are there.
Those electric static sprayers, they're excellent.
Yeah, they're very expensive, but
360 decontamination of viruses and bacteria that are on and around surfaces. They're wonderful. And even in the air around those surfaces.
Yes, ma'am. I know that it's sanitized and keeps our guests safe. So thank you for knowing more about those. But those are the actions that we're taking here at our hotel to ensure the safety and security of all our guests. So
perfect. And somebody was asking about the hydro spray that targeted compounds in the air. Tyler, what was that called again? That new one that the sports teams are doing?
Yeah, a lot of sports teams are doing it. It's called dry hydrogen peroxide, and it's actually not really a spray. It's more of a gas that's created through a standalone system in the space. But it really has the same effect of you can think of as a sprayer, where it's reaching anywhere air is to get into the space. Basically, it's using humidity and oxygen to create a gas that attacks other things that have hydrogen in it, and basically attaches to that, so it renders it useless. Great little case study. We work with a lot of sports teams. One of the sports teams was in the World Series this year that had installed that system throughout all their training centers, wherever the players basically went. And they saw like a 60% decrease in infection rates of really sick days of everything through that.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, so beyond COVID, it's a really cool technology that can work for the future as well.
And have you ever heard of anything is called fogging?
Fogging, I've heard of it. I can't speak to it because I don't really know about it too well. I understand it's some sort of chemical spray that goes through everything.
Yeah, somebody's asking, is that what you're referring to? And it is not, Tasha, what Tyler is referring to. Fogging is different than the a dry hydrogen peroxide gas that we're talking about, that the sports teams have been using successfully. There's some great case studies online if you all want to take a look at that. How has labor needs been affected? And by the I guess the lack of capacity, not being able to set totally to capacity, and is there going to be more of an impact on producing shows moving forward in terms of labor fees?
Well, as a speaker, I can tell you when hybrid kicks in, it's going to increase costs. It can't not increase the cost, because think about it. You're having speakers now presenting sessions in multiple breakouts. And if you're going to offer a true hybrid experience and record us, then you're going to have the camera equipment and the crews and the AV techs in all of those rooms. And you're going to have to increase your AV budget, your production budget. And also just because of the touch points that a hotel has now. I think Tiffany, you mentioned the wiping, the visible wiping now that we like to see employees do, rather than the old days where they stayed in the background. They're probably going to ramp up those positions, and there's going to be more of them. So again, whether it's kind of a sanitation and optics thing, keep people safe, but also get them to think that they are safe too, and come out and say, hey, we're doing this. And so the additional, the additional costs, I think will, who knows how much it's going to add, but
I have found that
it's come from somewhere.
I have found that the fees, like for the lack of people that are there, and then you having to have the recording equipment, is you're saving on the travel, and you're saving all the expenses of those individuals that would come out. So really it's offsetting and almost an equal cost. And from the hotel standpoint, and Tiffany and Barbara, as being a venue, can speak to this a little bit. The companies I've talked to, their executive teams have said it's been a wash as far as additional costs go, because they've taken things that were happening in the back of the house and moved them forward. And they've changed positions around. They may not have as many cooks in the back, and they have like new positions where they have a couple wellness people that are floating around. So it hasn't actually increased costs per se for them from that standpoint. Same with food service. I think, Tiffany, yours hasn't changed much, which is why your perception of having the meetings now versus then are very similar, because your food service was similar. But exactly. I could tell you probably Barbara's experience would be a little bit different to that, where, you may have had a buffet where you went up and served yourself, and now you don't have that luxury. So
yeah. And it's, how are we tray passing hors d'oeuvres? We're not going to be doing that anymore, right? So a lot of our caterers have come up with push carts where you grab it and get it yourself, which is kind of a fun, cool way. So you're still utilizing the same amount of labor. But I know for us, we're trying as much as possible not to push those additional costs onto our clients, and kind of keep it as a venue cost as much as we can. Obviously, if there's, extensive cleaning or a setup day that goes into it as requested by the client, that might be a little bit more, just talking about more of the cleaning portion. But we're trying to absorb as much of that as possible so that, knowing that clients will need to spend some more maybe on AV because they want to do a live stream or the hybrid situation, they're able to still do that.
Yeah, I would agree from a luxury resorts perspective. We're still very busy in all of our outlets and our the pools, the spa, the golf. So we still have a huge amount of labor here to service and care for our guests. And so when you add in, usually we're sold out during the week for those conferences, and we had our leisure, and we're seeing that leisure move into the weekday as our conferences have weekend because of COVID. So we're not incurring any additional fees for our clients that are coming in. You'll see our seasoned banquet team that has been here since we opened, like 20 years, and they're working the pool decks versus, because we want to make sure that we keep those amazing team that know how to do meetings and events on our staff. And so that when the switch is flipped again, we're ready to go. We're not hiring all new staff. We kept our seasoned team here. And like you had mentioned, Michelle, you just have a different role or a different title. And then we'll look to switch back in and hire that temporary labor for the pool deck, And
then for WEC, how were the bars handled? And for Connect, if you guys had bars there, like, is there a specific best practice?
I can't say no. I was definitely took you to the bar at WEC. It was amazing. I think what was really smart, for example, we went to downtown Grapevine and Old Town. They had this huge outdoor event for us, and the bars that were set up were 4-sided. So they created a little square and then 4 different routes for them to go. There was plexiglass. And then they put plexiglass between, so you had 8 lines running at one time for the bars. And they had several of them there. One thing I do believe, in post-COVID time, thinking about our guest safety is taking control of those receptions or those sidebar dinners. Go ahead and plan that for your guests, because, if they go off to the restaurant on their own, that's when the masks come off and people get a little more relaxed. But if you can help control those offside receptions, I would really encourage from a planner perspective to just ensure your team safety and planning ahead. Hey, we know we always have a late night bar this night. Let's take control of it and make sure it's done correctly so everyone is safe.
I just want to say, in thinking about kind of beverage service, I know we're looking at a lot of the pre-mixed beverage options, and what are those available? So little splits of wine, fun, spritzers and that sort of thing, so that, you're not doing that public pour, or you're limiting the amount that you're doing. You can also limit the bars by passing those or having them at a station where somebody can just grab and go with them. So, we all know a beer tub, but kind of transitioning that beer tub into, fun cocktails that are just grab and go, so thinking about creative ways to limit those bar lines and limit that service, I think, is important too.
Yeah, go ahead, Gary.
No, I was just going to add the Marriott Orlando. There was grab and go, and even the coffee/iced tea breaks that were set up around the trade show floor were attended by a server. So you couldn't go up and just grab a cup of coffee or get a refill or get an iced tea. They asked you what you wanted, and you told them. They served it for you wearing gloves, and that's how you got it. So those were all attended to by a server, which I liked. And all the daily luncheons and things were all prepackaged in paper bags. So whether you wanted a chocolate chip cookie or a sandwich, obviously chips, they're all in their own bags, and it was a grab and go with plastic silverware in a bag.
I like to add, just in my experience with the reception piece of it, it's really hard. When I'm at a reception, I go to get a drink, and you're going to be drinking, and you're standing and talking. It's hard to do that with a mask on, right? So you're going to want to remove your mask to drink. So I have found a best practice for reception is to serve the beverages when they're already seated. So people drink only when they're seated. You're not allowed to up and walk around during a reception. And I do think that's a best practice during this time frame. You're looking at putting safety first. That would be the way to do it, because otherwise at a reception, it's too easy to mosey through with a mask off and end up taking a drink and talking to somebody and being less than 6 feet apart. So
Michelle, that's a good point. We're doing that actually with our fam that's in house this evening. We're pre-assigning seats for everyone there. Cocktails are served at the table, and that's exactly what we're doing. And especially kind of in this fall time where we're seeing a little more of a spike, it has to be safety first, and we can do it successfully. So I think you bring up a good point.
Thank you. And then I have, it says building production events insurance now look for certain HVAC criteria to be met for the events that are happening in venues. Tyler, have you heard this in for traditional event in markets that are already open, or and if not, do you believe it will be a new reality moving forward?
I haven't seen anything on the insurance level for requirements, but I do know that almost every large hospitality organization or trade organization that supports that industry is coming out with guidelines, relying on companies like mine or Ashrae or CDC to drive those. And I think that there is going to be a standard in the next year or two based on indoor air quality, especially for spaces that have a lot of people in it, like events or schools. That's coming. I know that's coming out at the state level, probably going to come at the federal level as well.
Yeah, I'm surprised it's not being talked about more, honestly. I mean, when I reached out to you guys said I think they just heard, I had an inquiry after from the Hotel Motel Association of America, but that was the only one that you guys have had for it. So this is such an important topic in getting us back to face-to-face meetings. So super, super important.
Yeah,
we're going to need to start wrapping up. We're actually at an hour and a half. I do want to just have a couple more. We're not going to be able to answer all your questions. I'm hoping I'm going to be able to lump them together as much as I can. But if somebody does come down sick, what is the plan in place for that? What is some examples of a health and safety plan that you could put in place if somebody gets sick? I mean, I would tell you that one of the things is I use in-house physicians. So if somebody ends up with a temperature, and each day we check temperature, so if you end up with a temperature on day 2, we would just send you over the nurse practitioner or the physician's assistant that's on site, and they have the bunch of options at their fingertips, including sending you over to the local urgent care to be tested, but they could test you on site depending on the budgets that you have in place for that. But they would go ahead and manage that situation so that they can identify what the risk is and whether or not you would be removed from the program or not.
Yeah, and so for most of our events, we have an EMT on site, or the client can request to have an EMT on site. It's minimal, maybe $150, but having that EMT there, I think, is important. Just to have, and having a room where they can go to if somebody does find themselves ill.
Perfect. I'm going to ask you guys real quick to just leave us with one last kind of key takeaway or last impression you'd want to leave the audience with today. And I'm going to ask you to do that in just a moment. I'm just going to talk really briefly to the participants, our audience. In closing, at the beginning of this presentation, I talked about our purpose and our goals to inspire, elevate, educate, and focus on forward moving and what is possible rather than what is not. My hope is that as a result of today, we leave you feeling empowered, inspired, and more confident in your journey forward for 2021. If you gained something from this show, I want you to take action of letting me know, either through the survey that we're sending out or a message to us, or both. This is our last show of 2020. And like many of you, I'm looking forward to closing this chapter and to welcoming 2021. So I'm going to say, let's do a cheers for those of you that have a beverage in hand, to closing out 2020, to bringing in 2021 before we have the panel do their last take. Thank you guys for being here. Gary, it looks like you drank all yours already. I'm going to go ahead and have you kick us off with your key takeaway.
Who?
Gary.
Oh, thank you. You can't talk enough. So if you're the vendor or you're the event professional or the middle person or the provider or the 1099, whoever you are, you can't talk enough in this process. Get out in front of something and keep each other informed, because we're in Northern California. Our health protocols and restrictions change every day, every single day. And so hotels, planners, you don't know if you're coming or going, and what you plan today could be totally irrelevant in 48 hours because the rules have changed. So I would just say you got to talk a lot. You're not going to be able to text your way out of this thing. Keep talking and get out in front of things and keep the other party appraised of what the expectation is, even if it's, not so good news and you say, hey, you know, the county just did this or did that, talk it out, figure out a way to get around, you know, get around it or deal with it. But please don't leave the other party hanging as to what's going on back there. What's going on? What do we do? You can't talk enough.
Perfect. Thank
I'm
you for
sorry,
that, Gary.
can't talk too much is what I was meant to say. Yeah, can't talk enough. Can't talk too much. Whatever. You want.
Got it. Okay, I'm going to go to Barbara.
Well, I just think that we all want to get back together. We all want to meet in person, and whether it's a group of 10 or a group of 100 or more outside, work with your partners and getting creative on, you know, how can you make your meeting needs successful and still safe and, you know, following protocols, but exciting, and get that creativity out there. It's a good thing to remember as sometimes we get a little down. So we want to get creative and utilize your partners, whether it's venue to venue, caterer to caterer, or meeting planner to venue, or everything in between. We can really utilize each other right now for creative thinking on how to get back together.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Tiffany.
Yeah, I just would want everyone that's attending to take away that you can host meetings now. We can do this safely. I think Barbara is correct. Absolutely. With be creative, rely on your resources. There's tons of professional planners out there. Make those connections and just stay close. There is no guidebook to this. We are working in real time for solutions. And I think just being collaborative, being honest, and having the same goal in mind of keeping attendees safe and having an amazing experience. And it can be done. We're doing it. So good luck.
Thank you. And Tyler.
Yeah, I'd say just promote indoor air quality and healthy buildings as one of the more important topics for bringing in people to your event. I think it's an excellent marketing opportunity, as well as it keeps the facility owners and operators constantly thinking about how to improve their indoor air quality. That's the way we can move forward and get people back in the buildings.
And I'd like to just say, hey, we're all in this together. This is why I started this whole thing, bringing thought leaders together. And I really appreciate the panelists, you guys being here. I've built friendships from this and really strong alliances. So I do really appreciate that. I also appreciate having the audience on. Those of you who've been loyal, been with us and watching this show from the beginning of May. I just really appreciate you guys being here and allowing me to give back to an industry that's given so much to me and that I really am passionate about and love. So thanks you guys for being part of it. I want to wish you and your families a safe and peaceful holiday season and look forward to seeing you on January 14th, 2021 for our next live meetings updates 2021. So thank you. Please stay in touch. Please stay safe. And thank you, everybody.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
It can be done. Do it.
Yep.
Do it.
Amen to that.
Thank you.